this series of The Ultimate Fighter a failure? I'm going to attempt to answer that question and review episode 2. But before I do that, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe as we have brand new videos every single week. So first and foremost, the ratings are not apparently doing well. They're averaging around 294,000 per episode. And apparently that's half of the viewership of Series 22, which had Uriah Faber and Conor McGregor on it. But the big problem with that is TV habits are so different now than they were back then. Don't forget, a lot less people sit down and watch live television. There's so many different options. There's streaming services. There's UFC Fight Pass, which also has it on. There's ESPN Plus. And then, you know, there's illegal streams as well. But obviously, I wouldn't watch it on there because I'm a good boy. Don't come after me, Dana.
We got one. We got him.
That's the thing. We can't just quantify, right, okay, it's only getting this amount of views, so it's bad. We need to look at where everybody else is watching it and how they're watching it. Because people are saying this is one of the least watched Ultimate Fighters ever. But I think it's probably actually going to be one of the highest just because it's spread across all these different platforms. We can't be so quick just to write it off just yet. So let's talk about episode 2. We were supposed to have Trevor Willis versus Timur Valvav fight this week, but the fight was cancelled due to Trevor having a cold sore. You know, these kind of things happen. It is what it is. And I get that they've cancelled it because, you know, a cold sore is essentially a big open wound and it's infectious as well. But Trevor kept talking about it as though it was some big skin condition and people didn't understand it. It's like, just relax, it's a cold sore, okay? But I think the big problem is it's that big reality TV trope. Let's make everything as big as possible. I couldn't imagine that you'd be able to make 5 to 10 minutes worth of television talking about a cold sore. Nobody cares. Just chill out. But they will be fighting apparently next week instead at a catchweight, which is perfect for both guys because then they don't have to keep cutting weight again. We started getting a little bit of confrontation on this episode. We had Lando annoying Roosevelt and he was sort of talking about that the veterans got kicked out of the UFC for a reason and they all know why they've been kicked out and, you know, that the prospects are basically better, all that kind of thing. But so far, they've lost the last week's episode, so maybe the prospects aren't that good after all. And then Roosevelt started kicking off. He wanted to fight there and then in the house, and Lando instantly backed off. I don't know whether that's because he was afraid or because he's playing it smart, because if you're fighting in the house, that's a one-way ticket to getting kicked off, and you don't want to waste that opportunity. I think you shouldn't be fighting in the house unless you feel like you really, really need to. You need to focus all your attention in the octagon. So we now have this week Mando Gutierrez versus Cody Gibson, and we get to learn a little bit about them. Cody had a stint in the UFC and he lost to Aljamain Sterling in his debut. He lost a handful of fights and left the UFC. Mando, we got to learn a little bit about him. He fought in LFA and he started talking about his family a lot and how much he misses his family. But I'm getting so bored and fed up of that already. They're constantly talking, I miss my family, I miss my family, I miss my family. I get it. You miss your family. But I also don't believe you. Don't forget, these fighters, they tour all around. They're training, 6 to 8 weeks every so often. So they're used to being away from their families and fighting all over the world and all over the country. They're used to this. I just can't believe after a couple of days, you're already missing your family, you're being upset. One of them was complaining. He was saying, oh, I'm missing my wedding anniversary and my wife's birthday. And Conor chimed in and he said, that's a break, which I think is quite fun. You know, he's sort of been playful with them. And talking about Conor being playful, he then had a bit of a party with all of the other guys and he brought like bottles of Proper 12 and cans of Forged Stout. And, you know, and he was talking to both his team and Chandler's team, really just having a nice time with them. And he was perhaps a little bit...
Are you intoxicated? Are you intoxicated?
But, you know, I think that's fine, right? If you want to have a drink and have a bit of a laugh, let's go for it, right? Who actually cares? So now let's talk about the actual fight itself. It was quite good fun. It was a nice back and forth for half of the first round. But Cody was just too good. He was too tall, he was too skilled, he had better striking, he had fantastic takedown defense, and he had way more experience. And Mando just couldn't seem to keep up with that pace, and he just didn't seem to have anything for Cody. And Cody got a first round knockout with a flying knee, and Mando went down like a sack of spuds, meaning that it's 2 wins in a row for Team Chandler. And that's really setting Conor back now, but there's still a lot more fights to happen, so we'll see who's actually going to win the series overall. But the actual episode itself, to be honest, for me, it was a little bit lackluster. It wasn't overly interesting. There wasn't a lot to write home about. I just feel like I really want to focus more on these fighters and their training camp and their experiences, and then really focus on the fight at the end. I feel as though you could just tune in, see who's fighting, watch the last 5 minutes, and that's it. But maybe I'm not really the audience. I'm not really a big fan of reality TV, but there's still plenty of episodes left, so maybe it can get me hooked in. But I do think that's all we've got time for. Thank you everyone for watching. If you can like, comment and subscribe, it really does help us out.